everybody. I'm John OLoughlin. Welcome to my channel. It's called McDuff Lives, and tonight it's Thursday, so it's time for the Thursday Night Trio with George Webb and Professor Darrell Hamamoto. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, John. Good evening, George.
Good evening, Doctor.
All right. Well, I think we've got a good connection all around here, and I'm happy to be sitting here in my Mystery Island studio with Andy DeBala riding the board there with Professor Hamamoto in his studio at home there, and George Webb. Everybody in different places, but we have great conversations. And to start us off tonight, let's start with George Webb, because I've been seeing you in and out, but I've been so busy with my program over the weekend with my McDuff Memorial that I haven't caught up with the work you're doing. So may I ask you to give us an update?
Sure, John. We extended we had the beautiful event. Dr. Hamamoto, thank you for your very nice convocation, I guess, at that event. And it was a great celebration of you as an author, John, and the great achievements of the McDuff story and the inspiration of the McDuff story. But as always, we always extend the charrette. You don't get away that easy. You come to Mystery Island, we're going to get you in another charrette. So we had a 3 or 4 day extension, and we went a lot into the pressing issues of the day. I think the big thing is these doctors, these Black doctors getting murdered. I'm up here in Virginia researching these guys. Did they sign off? Did they sign off on the athletes going to Wuhan and say they were okay when they were sick, had the mysterious pneumonia? Were they whistleblowers and now they were murdered because they said there was something wrong? Or was it just 2 random guys that came back to a house that they were trying to rob 2 days before with the son of the Black doctor and the Black nurse, full bird colonels? And it's a little hard to believe the current story right now, which is, this had nothing to do with the Wuhan Games, nothing to do with the source of the coronavirus, nothing to do with the total lockdown that we're living under. That's not why these folks were murdered. It's just that there was just persistent burglars who tried to get in the house on Monday. There was a 911 call. Things didn't go well. And then they came back 2 days later, and that's why these folks were murdered. So that's what I'm researching, getting the police reports. And then the other big thing is the CNN lawsuit. Of course, all the trolls for CNN, their motions were denied, and we're moving forward with depositions. So all the people who were there in March of 2020, who were just kind of consuming the news, gave their version of events. And I've collected 4 different affidavits now. And then we get to see Donnie O'Sullivan on the stand and CNN on the witness stand. It's going to be great. It's going to be wonderful. It's going to be fun for the whole family.
Professor, how about yourself? What have you been working on?
Yes, sir. As you know, I've been going in on the whole celebrity chef industry, starting with Tony Bow, and then the person who found him dead after he supposedly had strangled himself, since we're on a murder motif right now, George. Eric Ripert, who's his friend, who apparently comes from the Provence area, southern France, which is also where the medieval communities developed Kabbalah, which later migrated up to Paris and formed the foundation of the Grand Lodge of Paris. And then Ripert gets exfiltrated from Joël Robuchon, who's a master of the lodge. But Ripert, the first place he touches down en route to his career as a celebrity chef, is in, guess where? The Watergate Hotel, where he operates as a sous chef, I think, sort of an apprentice. Well, I guess he was beyond his apprenticeship. And then he rises through the ranks And I think there was some sort of Grand Lodge connections there in D.C., which was founded in 1813. And from there, he rises through the ranks. And today, I went to the other side of the world, and I looked at the career of one Rocky Aoki. And if you're not familiar with that name, you're probably familiar with his chain of restaurants known as Benihana. And okay, George, I know you're getting antsy there. You're shifting in your seats.
No. It's
but there is a Kawaoka connection.
That's all I need to hear. That's all I need to hear. Just get the bioweapons. As long as you get the bioweapons, I'm a happy guy.
All right. Well, yeah, all the feel-good eating experience of Benihana. Well, you could use people who are watching this show know what restaurants really function as, right? With all the really thin profit margins, but they make enormous amounts of money somehow. But it's a feel-good experience to conceal the darker post-war aspects of the U.S.-Japan connection, right? And as it turns out, and this goes back to Mr. O'Loughlin's era, when Japan came into the fold of U.S. intelligence, right? And this all specifically through Major General Charles Willoughby. He was the commander of U.S. Army Intelligence G2 in Tokyo, working under MacArthur. This is during the U.S. occupation, which lasted into 1952. And so there are other couple threads that connect. Perhaps Harry Harrison, Ambassador Harry Harrison, comes out of this. His parents do, his mother probably. I suspect he was an adoptee. I think his real biological father was straight up Japanese. His mother was, I won't say, but and then his father was an American GI, probably an officer, maybe CIA intelligence, and then brought to the USA. And then you have Sasakawa Ryochi, who was a Class A war criminal, who, instead of going into prison, was brought in by the U.S. government to help start the post-war Japanese government. And Sasakawa also is one of the founders of the Unification Church, the Moonies. And of course, you got the connection there, George, the Moonies with?
Shin on Chi.
You got it. So I'll let you take it from there. There he is. He's very grandfatherly looking.
Can I just jump in on Sasakawa?
Pardon me?
Can I just jump in on Sasakawa really quick, John?
Yeah, I wish you would. I wasn't ready.
Well, when you touch the handle of the Sasakawa door, you throw the Sasakawa door open. And Sasakawa, interesting that you had mentioned him tonight, was Mr. Unit 731. Hey, we're going to give you all the secrets, Nazis in America, to take to Fort Detrick. Here's your Unit 731 treasure trove. This is Sasakawa, who goes on to have all these NGOs, these fake NGOs that are fronts for the bioweapons program in in Japan and Korea. So you couldn't pick a better frontman than Sasakawa, save George Soros, for somebody who is a servitor of the CIA. Yeah. So I'm so glad you picked on Sasakawa tonight. That makes me feel good.
And Sasakawa was the funder of Rocky Aoki and Benihana restaurants. That was a Sasakawa operation.
Oh my God.
Oh yes.
So no, these folks don't miss a trick. They don't miss a fortune cookie.
No.
Everything is connected. I mean, they launder a dollar until the dollar just loses all color and color fastness. This thing. I mean, come on, man. I mean, I saw Mark Plutonic saying he saw Anthony Bourdain in New Orleans 3 weeks before his death. Anthony Bourdain's traveling troupe. It may not be proven now, but Seth Rich traveled with that troop back and forth from the United States on behest of Warren Buffett. And the funnel point for all the stuff coming down from all the pipelines, XL pipeline as well as Keystone, it all comes down to New Orleans. And the traveling troupe that Anthony Bourdain moved with, under the cover of Cuisine, as you mentioned, is going to be about oil and gas and maybe uranium a little bit, not so much uranium in the Far East, but it is going to be a school play for Mr. Warren Buffett.
And the heroin, correct? The drugs, the international drug trade.
Well, if you remember, Anthony Bourdain did get into a big trouble with being a heroin addict, and his whole book was up from heroin addict to become master chef.
He admits being a heroin addict, and what he doesn't talk about is his father's background, right, with French intelligence during the colonial occupation by France of Indochine. That was his pappy. He just starts when his father was an executive at Columbia Records. That's where he starts, but he doesn't go back to the Indochina War. Well, we did, though.
I'm sorry I'm chiming, but I'm chiming in because if you look at Ho Chi Minh being taken up the river, Carol McIntosh, who's one of the people who signed the affidavit, her father was in the army unit that took Ho Chi Minh to Hanoi for him to become the new leader. All right, him to become the new leader of North Vietnam. So these things are really bad school plays, and you would expect that their kids, because I'm sure he's chef of Ho Chi Minh, and that's what we're going to find out, right? That Anthony Bourdain's dad was there to listen in on Ho Chi Minh, and he's there to put the poison into the food if Ho Chi Minh ever goes too crazy. Right? And then he's going to be our back channel to what Ho Chi Minh is doing. That's going to be the story. We just don't know it yet.
Well, that's interesting, George, because Ho Chi Minh was in Paris, and he probably met Mr. Pierre Bourdain back then when he was at the Sûreté. And Ho Chi Minh was one of the founders of the French Communist Party. And he was also at Versailles, but they didn't want to meet with him because they felt that Vietnam was just a possession of France, which it was just a pisshat colony. But guess who Ho Chi Minh's hero was? Thomas Jefferson. And he traveled the world. He was cosmopolitan. Uncle Ho, he traveled to all the great ports around the world as guess what? As a cook.
Well, and he also, I'm sorry, I'm chiming again. He spoke beautiful French. He spoke, a lilting French, and he was, like you say, he moved in and out, and unctuously moved in and out of all the culinary circles of the French elite, and including the diplomatic circles, I might add. Mm-hmm. And many think he was a pawn, a servitor from the very get-go. I think he went to the Sorbonne, if I'm not mistaken. He had a Western training, as did somebody who you don't normally associate with that, which is not Hamamoto, but Yamamoto. Admiral Yamamoto was educated at Harvard, I believe.
That's true. Yeah. He's the one that said, the sleeping giant phrase, we've awakened this. That was Admiral Yamamoto Isoroku. Yeah. There are a lot of Japanese, they're cosmopolitan, by this point. These are the same people who emerged. They beat the Russian Empire in the Russo-Japanese War in 1898. But not only were they in the U.S., but they were especially interested in places like Berlin. And that reason I mention is that because I think that's when they first started to get into the whole bacteriological genetics research from the state of the art of the Weimar.
Well, I see Mark Housatonic is saying, I feel like I'm the Housatonic whisperer now. He's saying that the Swedish chef got his start working for Wild Bill Donovan. And I'm trying to remember who the Swedish chef is. So there you go.
The Culinary Institute of America, right?
That's right. CIA.
I'm trying to figure out who he means by the Swedish chef. Maybe Mark will put that in the notes.
Yeah, interesting.
No, I don't know who that is. But we know about the author who was murdered, talking about people that have, have met an ugly fate after exposing some truths. That's Stieg Larsson. Just like Japan in the post-war period, there's always been an underground, a deep underground, a fascist underground. And they use the popular culture, the toys, the Game Boys, and the cool electronics to kind of mask this and fund at the same time. That is, finance this what Dave Emery calls the fascist international. It never went away. Oh, by the way, Sasakawa was a big fan of Benito Mussolini. He went to Rome to meet Mussolini. They've been photographed together, and he called Mussolini the perfect fascist. He wanted to bring together all these different totalitarian regimes from the Third Reich to Mussolini and Japan. And as we all know, there were elements within the U.S. government and the military who were very much behind that initiative as well, and they're still there. But they're not wearing the black shirts, though. They're wearing the white medical smock. And by the way, George, I was at a restaurant and I opened a fortune cookie and it read, "Help, I'm a prisoner of the NIH."
I think I ate at that restaurant. I think I might have been the one who penned that. Okay. Mark Kulak, the great Mark Kulak, has graced us with his demurring that he was just joking about the Muppet Swedish chef working for Mussolini, butchering him unceremoniously as he was being hung up in Milan. But what Mark did add was the fact that this Italian fascisti, this Italian fascist movement, was the retaining pin, if you will, for these Unit 731 secrets. So maybe there is a banana there as far as these secrets that moved from Unit 731 being processed and serially passaged, might I say, into a lab in Italy and into NATO labs. Those secrets, those 731 results and secrets for virus and vaccines and horrible experiments had to go somewhere. Some, I think, went to Korea, and that's why we had the horrible biological experiments in the Korean War and the Vietnam War. But I think some also went to the Italian fascists. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't look very much further than that island over there with all those Ukrainians that seem to produce so many Ukrainian presidents. And I can't remember the name of the island right now, but I know it's something with snails. So we'll get back to that.
Well, it just flashed on me, George. It seems like these deep maneuvers are always masked by something popular, trendy, and fun, like food or toys or entertainment, amusement parks, whatever it might be. But when you talk about the Italian connection, I think we have to look at the fashion industry as a way to move material, information, intelligence, women, as commerce. Merchandise from country to country. We have the different couture houses of Milano, right there, and then in the 70s and 80s, you have the emergence of Japan as a world haute couture center, and all of it being coordinated by the British intelligence asset Anna Wintour, right, of Vogue magazine, whose father was connected to a British conservative, I would say, fascist British publishing circles herself. That's where she comes from. So it's all of a piece. It's all this international, this fascist international that Dave Emery has been talking about for years and years. And by the way, it was Dave Emery that I first learned about Kodama Yoshio and his book, which is in English, by the way. I think you can find it online, a PDF of it. Where he talks about how he was recruited by U.S. intelligence to help extend this fascist international. And George, you're claiming it's more of a school play than an actual conflict. I tend to agree, especially if you know the backstory, as you just laid out, of Ho Chi Minh, and then people like Mao Zedong, right, who was affiliated with Yale. In China, the Yale in China project in Yunnan. So time and time again, you see these patterns, and we've figured out the system. Now we have to get to the point where we're looking at solutions. And today in my show earlier, I proposed that we follow the blueprint that Fritz Lang, the director, left for us. He came up during the Third Reich, and he worked with Goebbels. He met with them, and they came to an accord and said, "Listen, Mr. Lang, Herr Lang, you can make your movies so long as you," because they respected the art of cinema. I mean, UFA and German cinema, number one in the world at the time. But then, of course, Lang came to the U.S. and had a career there. But he made the classic movie starring Peter Lorre, or Laurie, as we call him, and the film's called M. And there was a psychopathic killer running around, terrorizing the whole community, Berlin, right? The whole city. No one could find him. No one can bring him in. He's a psychopath. And the only way, and the police said, well, the only way we can get him is to bring in the organized criminal underworld to bring this guy to justice. So I think we here in the U.S., since the law enforcement, the judicial system, all the way up to the Supreme Court, the legislator, it's all wrapped up. They own this. I think we need to sit down with even people like Igor Japochik Kolomoisky and sit down with all these underworld characters who don't want to kill the world like these other psychopaths, these biogenetic psychopaths like Kawaoka-san, and say, listen, bring these people in, bring them in. So this is called the M strategy that I'm proposing, George and John.
I love it.
Like captures like.
Oh, I like it. Forte de Marmi is the island that produces so many Rothschild leaders. Forte de Marmi is the homespun namesake of our good friend Zelensky, who, if you remember, after being a wonderful comedic career, became the leader of what we know now as Ukraine. So, and don't forget your other Rothschild favorite, Oleg Deripaska. You won't find a mine he's not been in, on behalf of Nathan Rothschild. And of course, he'll be presented to you in the next election as the friend of the enemy, attacking the poor Rothschildians in yet another election.
Well, speaking of ex-comedians like Zelensky, President Zelensky of the Ukraine, I'm predicting that Sacha Baron Cohen will be the next prime minister of Britain. Borat. I mean, isn't he campaigning already? He says, he's on the behalf of the ADL. He says, we got to clamp down on all these American patriots here. That's Borat. Sacha Baron.
I thought he would be the leader of Kazakhstan, wouldn't he? I mean, have camel will travel. Have camel can carry uranium. I'll carry the water.
He can wear two hats.
Mm-hmm.
He can wear the the Kazakhstan hat, and also be the prime minister of Britain at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And he could campaign in his mankini.
Yeah. Well, I don't approve of some of his stuff. As a matter of fact, I don't approve of much of his stuff. A little bit over the top for me.
Yeah, his brother is a well-known, high-level neuroscientist. So he's part of the equation because, as you know, the whole neurological, this is the decade of the brain, supposedly, that was declared by President Barack Obama. But the whole neurological system is under attack. And Baron Cohen, the professor, I guess it's the brother of Sacha Baron Cohen, he's leading the way in hacking the brain.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like they knew Biden would be president. If there wasn't sort of a Manhattan Project to improve the brain or save the brain, we might now all be, under some Kamala Harris type English. And I'm not exactly sure what that is, but I know Ebonics, and I know you're an expert in Ebonics. I know you would be able to interpret for us. You would be the Kamala whisperer because you were from South Central.
I am, and she's not even African American. Isn't that true? I
Oh,
mean,
you're gonna get in so much trouble, Professor.
oh,
Oh my
okay.
God. If
All right.
you didn't say that.
No, no, no. We love her. She's the vice president, and you know,
She comes
we'll
from
obey
wherever
her.
she says she comes from, right?
Well, yeah, this is the post truth era, so I guess you can just make it up as you go along. It's just sort of a live action role play reality that we live in, a political reality. And yeah, we'll pretend to just like under the Soviet Union, you just say yes to everything and then subvert it at the same time. That's the strategy I'm taking.
If you get an outfit, you can be a cowboy too.
Well, I have a question of you both. Now that you guys have a book out, what's the next book? I mean, here we go.
Well, I'm not writing another book ever. That was hard.
It's not fun, is it?
Well, I just today, Andy sent me a final version, and you know how it is. You can always find some little bitty things. So I found a couple of more things sitting back. We're going to get the ebook published shortly, and then Andy's working on some options for a nice publication of a hardcover, which I'm hoping to have ready in the next couple of weeks. But we are also still collecting the video because we have Doug Valentine and Jim Zobel from the MacArthur Museum that we still have to do their remarks. So we're going to wait for that, and then we'll put together a composite. We had a videographer there also, so he's going to do put all this together with a post-production project and maybe reduce it down to an hour or so of highlights. That's where we're going with the video and the book at this point. And no, I'm not going to write another book, George. Are you crazy? God.
I knew the answer, but I just wanted to throw you the softball, let you hit it out of the park.
No, George, I think you know me well enough. Professor Hamamoto, are you going to write another book? I hope you are.
Yes, I am. I'm doing the true crime. This is part of the Collegiate Gothic series. And see, there's one institution that seems to be getting away from any sort of scrutiny, right? We're looking at the medical establishment and other different agencies, right? NIH, WHO, NATO, but the universities are getting away. So my way of coming at them is sideways through crime. And I've already collected over 40, something like 42 case studies of murders and mayhem that have been committed in universities, including attacks on research scientists as well as undergraduates. And by the way, a lot of these crimes are committed under the guise of robberies, and because a lot of schools are in so-called bad neighborhoods, right, like Columbia or USC, so they can always put a supposed gangbanger in there to shoot a Chinese patent holder, some guy who came up with a lucrative patent. So I'm going to go right down the list there, and I wanted to make it into a podcast, but it'll also have a written component of these case studies here. So that's Collegiate Gothic, and the other project is because I want to create a handbook for people who want to do some writing and research. And I've devised a method over the past 40 years that I call cultural forensics. So I'm developing this concept of cultural forensics because we know about criminalistics and computer forensics and evidence, and we've all seen CSI, but the missing part, and it's at least half of it, is the cultural dimension. And as I've been doing, I study the popular culture. So I've developed a theory and method called cultural forensics, and I'm going to create a short handbook and release it. Some of these principles.
Really interesting. Really interesting. Thank
You
you.
like that, John?
I love it. I think that's really exciting. I cultural forensics.
Yes.
It just sounds like a great subject that hasn't been delved into.
No, I think it would make a great series. It would be up there with CSI, and there's a series that was called "Lie to Me," which was based on the work of Dr. Paul Ekman. And George, by the way, it's Ekman who was the person who came up with this notion of Duper's delight. He could read the faces of the people, and this whole series called "Lie to Me," I think it was starring is it Eric Roth or something like that? He's a forensic physiognomist, I guess you can call it. He can look at slow down pictures of people and tell when there's misdirection or outright lying involved. And I think the MSM establishment are very threatened by it, because there have been a couple people like that on YouTube who study body language, right? Just like Lie to Me. And they were taken off. They were amongst the first people to be deplatformed. And George, they were deplatformed even before you. These forensics people, facial forensics, right? Body language. So anyway, I'm going to build that concept and go into the cultural forensics realm and make that and just the general attitude and outlook of just everyday people. Just kind of dig before they go into Benihana, they're going to think about, who is this guy Rocky Aoki? Is he really more than this happy-go-lucky sportsman who came here as a wrestler and was married to 3 different women and fathered another DJ, by the way, George? He's even bigger than DJ Benny Assy, and his name's Steve Aoki. That's Rocky Aoki's son, and we know how you figured this out. How DJs in these big dance parties, these international dance parties, how they operate into this global network of the party people, the party intelligence people, the exfiltration, the Oconus people.
You want to talk about a beautiful mosh pit super spreader event? Just go to a banana Nazi concert, and every dream and hope and wish that you've harbored secretly will be released, and also a lot of H1N1. And if you really have a desire to be hit with some new reconstituted variant of Spanish flu, Kawa Oka out of the University of Wisconsin may grace you with a little sprinkle as you're out there cavorting and moshing on the big pit.
Well, yeah, Andy came I think it was either a video or a still photo of the spray that they put out there, because it's so hot. They just kind of put this mist out there, and it's caught right on photos or in video. It's right there.
That'd feel good.
Peter Strzok would be proud, and Harry Harris. I have a feeling that when Wendy Rodriguez, who was the runner between McChrystal's office in D.C., McChrystal and Associates, and Harry Harris's office, and remember they were big in Korea. When she gets stabbed in the throat, when she goes into that convenience store, I have a feeling that wasn't just a street crime. It's just like, well, there was some thug and she came in to order pizza and she was running to Harry Harris's house and he was just about ready to bring in those 300,000, PCR kits. And they just happened to stab her in the throat. And she was about 23. I don't know if she's going to make collegiate Gothic or not, but I love the idea of collegiate Gothic. It makes so much sense because I think that there's these, a Zodiac killer called himself Sam. Right. And then, of course, Berkowitz called himself Son of Sam. We had Guccifer and then Guccifer 2 with the hacks. I think that the deep state has this kind of sense of humor that they do put a little dangle out there to let you try to figure it out, that, hey, this is all state sponsored. This is all a school play.
Absolutely. And speaking of that, I wonder if Dr. George Hodel had encountered Sasakawa. It seems like they were a partnership made in hell. because you
Yep.
got the Sasakawa 731 and you got Dr. George Hodel coming in under the auspices of the United Nations Refugee Relief, 1946, right after that. So it's all of a piece there.
Yeah, I definitely want to keep looking at Hodel because I think he is the, every generation has its henchman, where you just get to clean up on aisle 6 and you go from, clean up to clean up to clean up. And Hodel appears to be that guy in the 40s up through the 50s, no matter what continent you're talking about.
And you're right about this, about them leaving these clues for us to, because this is part of the thrill they get out of it by outsmarting us and showing us how clever, but they also use it as a means of taking credit, right? Just like the people who would put their boogers in library books, right? They just kind of pick their nose and they put it right in there so the next readers, I've been here, I've done this, this is my spit mark, right? They get off on that. But Hodel, George Hodel, and this is what Steve Hodel has figured out. Dr. George Hodel was leaving all these clues through artwork, right? People, Salvador Dali, especially these surrealists, and but there's one person that Steve Hodel forgot about, who is a real favorite of so-called performance studies at the university. And I'm going to talk about this one guy who was a performance studies maven. His name's Duran George. He taught at UCLA. He was wrapped up mummy style in wrap, and he suffocated. So that's going to be one of the collegiate Gothic studies. But performance studies is today is very much into BDSMD, bondage sadomasochism, and their idol is people like Alfred Jarry, the Theater of Cruelty, Ionesco. They're all French occultists, by the way. So we have to find out if, like Joël Robichon, if they were Master Masons. But I suspect they were. And their whole deal is to make performance out of cruelty and put all these different ritualistic elements in everyday life and make it our ordinary reality. And is that not what's happening? Even down to the genetic level, there are monstrosities that are being consciously put out there, and it's being done through, again, I've come up through this hypothesis through cultural forensics. It's coming up through French theater and literary theory, right? And that's why Peter Thiel is into it. This whole idea of mimetics, copying, replication, duplication, and taking it further. If people are exposed mimetically to cruelty, to deformations, right, to abominations, they become that abomination. They accept it and they become it. They will ingest it. They'll take it into their body and take it into their psychotics or their psychology through cultural mimesis. That's Peter Thiel, that's Jeff Bezos, that's all of them. And it comes all from Le Grand Loge de Paris, just like the Nouvelle Cuisine. And it comes originally from the south of France, where these medieval communities originated, who were, that started Kabbalah. It's also the area where the Cathars, they were persecuted. All these heresies against Rome were down in southern France. So you have this whole medieval history that migrates into the present. It's fascinating. And Dr. George Hodel, being from Odessa, being from this region of the world where all these heterodox ideas that are at bottom Luciferian, his family brought them, and his mother was French too, by the way. She was a dentist. They migrated to Pasadena, California, and they transplanted it to Hollywood, which is where all the movies emanate from. So I don't know if I'm imposing an artificial structure on it, but it sure does to me look like it's all of a piece.
Well, that's interesting because Hodel did study at the Montessori school for a year in Paris when it was first starting that first year. and there was this kind of avant-garde. It's not the Bloomberg set that was in London, but it was the if you had driven ambulances for James Jesus Angleton in the First World War, right? You then get to sit around and drink Pernod at these French cafes and consider, your membership in the Grand Lodge. And so you're saying the Grand Lodge in Paris caused this bacchanalian kind of carnivalistic meme or trope? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Now, the people who teach English and comparative literature in the university and performance studies in specific, they're familiar with it. But I think you have to take the timeline back to the 20s. It goes, even earlier than they're talking about. They trace it down to Michel Foucault, who's a post-war. Now, he's the person that really founded post-structuralist, it's called theory, with a capital T, right? And it's just Luciferianism. And it comes out of Paris. It comes out of a guy named Georges Bataille, who was a librarian in, when I say librarian, I mean he was an archivist and had access to all these rare manuscripts in the main library in Paris. Yeah, that's Foucault right there. He was known for, BDSMD. He's really the father of the 50 Shades of Grey, right? This is all part of the cultural mimesis process that I'm talking about. It trickles down from eggheads like this guy, Michel Foucault, who was into BDSMD and humiliation, and the people, the social planners and sociologists and behavioral scientists who were leading us up through Fast and Furious and the Great Reset, use this type of cultural politics and pushed it out there through the universities, and now through 2 or 3 generations of lawyers, doctors, anybody who went to a Research One institution got to learn about Michel Foucault and his influence, regardless of your discipline, even in medicine, right? Because he talks about the whole medical field as being a disciplinary institution. He talks about in Discipline and Punish, he talks about Jeremy Bentham, right? The panopticon, the universal surveillance system. This all comes out of Foucault. And some of it was critical of these systems, but the people who adopted his worldview, including people like Peter Thiel and Silicon Valley in general. I'm not talking about the programmer. I'm talking about the high-level DARPA, Pentagon people who created Silicon Valley and who've been read into the program. They come right out of that Parisian intellectual milieu, and it came to Yale. Yale brought it to the U.S. So you got your Skull and Bones there, and all the publishers and all the literary theorist figures who are created by intelligence. And no one's made this claim yet. I'm the first person that I know of. All these intelligence agencies brought these characters in and made them into academic superstars and gave them 6 figures incomes and created whole industries around them, gave them endowed chairs so that it would migrate into transgenderism through Rainbow Delight reading time at the public libraries, through the whole post-gender reality that the pharmaceutical companies have invested in. This is the forensics, the cultural forensics of this phenomenon. That's where it comes from. And you need to understand the genealogy before you can tackle the problem. And by the way, if I'm lecturing, and I was, in this manner and in this depth and pointing the finger at these ways, I have an enemy, a natural enemy of every professor at the university, because they're all read into it. They might not know it, but they have to subscribe to this orthodoxy in order to even get a job in these institutions. That's why the collegiate Gothic approach, I think, is going to be the most effective. And we're going to take it all the way back to Edgar Allan Poe. He was the man. He was read. Read the Cast of Amontillado, where the guy's sealed up into the wall. That's a whole Freemasonic parable right there.
Right down to the brick and mortar, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And the trowel, like Eric Trowell or Eric Traub.
Yeah.
I'm
So,
glad to hear you associate Poe with that darker side of Freemasonry. I've always suspected it, and that that his attitude is consistent with what I understand of that. I- I'm going to ask you guys your opinion. Speaking of the Panopticon, the Panopticon, of course, is the prison where the jailers are able to see everybody. Maybe not all the time, but a sufficient amount of their time is to know what they're doing all the time and to know if their people are getting out of line. And there was various schemes of it back in the 18th century, long halls of that you could see down from a chair in the middle, and you could spin around and see. Uh, these things have been a dream of control freaks for a long time. So I want to take that idea and apply it to what some people are saying about the vaccine, in that it's going to have your social security number. You're going to be associated with a certain batch. They're going to, in other words, attach a number to you, and that may be the actual function, is to just keep everybody under observation. And so they've got to somehow put a little number tag in you in some little tiny nano formula that, who knows, I'm not able to identify what the form would be, but you can conceive of them thinking of a way to put a little tattoo on a molecule somehow that says this is John OLoughlin, and this is the one that lives on Mystery Island, and here's where he is right now, because we know where he is because of his cell phone. That kind of a tracking thing is a fulfillment of the dream of the Panopticon of dreamers back 300 years ago. Um, do you guys think that that is part of what's going on here, is to create a tracing and tagging device for everybody?
Well, I'll jump in on that one and just say that the Gates patent is for the microneedles, like a matrix of microneedles. And within the patent, it very much talks about being able to extract information with a regular cell phone and a little optical device. So the idea being that every bar or restaurant owner or church or whatever could extract all that information, or police organization, without any special equipment. And that would be in the microneedles that would go in there. Whether that worked down to the quantum dot and nano type realm, I don't think so just yet. But I do know that exists with the Stanford patent with the microneedle. But I'm sure they're working on it. I mean, the idea is kind of the dream always. The Nazi dream always was there's the 6-digit number, but if that could always tell me who it was and where they were, that would be perfect. Then we wouldn't need the concentration camps. We could just kind of shelter people in place. We could do kind of an under lockdown kind of world.
well, I think it was a couple days ago I found the patent, the actual patent for the vaccine passport system. It's there, and I'll be glad to share it with the viewers here, the audience. But I think that this universal surveillance system that you're speaking of here, that's not the end game, right? That's just in order to corral the people and find them, locate them, so they can execute the real end game, which is transforming Homo sapiens sapiens, the human race, into a post-human biological entity that has all its human soul and its spirit programmed out of it. And this is what I'm reading into the most recent comments by Dr. Luc Montagnier, right, who says, hey, this can be passed on transgenerationally, right? That's the implication there. So this is one of those occultic rituals, and now the technology is at hand, but this is what the occultists from the medieval period have aspired to. The surveillance system was a midpoint, or it was going to facilitate what we're seeing here with what Dr. Montagnier has laid out. I'd like to interview him or talk to him and probe a little bit more deeply about what he's alluding to. I don't think he's giving us the full, because I don't think he thinks that we can understand the deeper message that he's putting across here. But it is the creation of biological entities that are bereft of a human soul. That's what I believe is to be the end game.
I don't want those people. Let's
No.
not do that. Let's cancel that program.
Right.
Let's
get the people.
I like soul brothers and soul sisters,
and soul music.
Yes.
And bereft, for those who don't know, can be purchased at Walmart on weekends during sale periods, and you can get it cheap sometimes. So just be watching for those bereft sales. No, I love your fantastic command of the English language, Doctor, and it's always a fireworks show listening to you speak.
Well, thank you. I only do it because I want to sound the warning. That's what I'm trying to accomplish. And I know a lot of this requires really, really stretching your mind. And it really beggars the imagination, a lot of this here. But if you read the culture, the society against the grain, right, and you step outside of it, this reality, and look at it objectively, I think that most people, thinking people, will come to startlingly similar conclusions that the three of us have arrived at. And of course, we need more than just 3 people. We need let's say 5 billion people to really understand where we're going with this. And the good news, I get the sense that there are people who are beginning to finally see it and understand the end game. It's a post-human reality. It's not a science fiction dream. It's not something we saw on the oversighted movie, The Matrix. It's always a Matrix, this Matrix. It's always got to relate to some kind of movie or Netflix series, which takes us off the reality that, hey, it's here. This is no movie. This is not a live action role play. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be That's The Last Poets, by the way. The revolutionary will not be televised. The revolution will be live.
Well, excellent. I'm looking at the chat, and I think a lot of people agree with you. That's a very serious topic, and sometimes the only way to deal with it is humor and flourishes occasionally here and there. So I second your treatment of the topic. It's a tough one, and you could really get kind of bogged down and get overwhelmed sometimes from it if you didn't have a little tongue in cheek. But it is a serious topic, and this 1984 world is closing in, and faster than ever, it seems like. So we have to kind of put our heads together to get a strategy going.
Mm-hmm. I like the M strategy.
That's fun too. I like it. If you turn M upside down, you get the W. I'm just saying.
And M, in its regular position, stands for what? Mort? Lust mord.
Yeah.
Lust murder. And that's what Dr. George Hodel was all about, lust mord.
But
and M too.
Okay, now that you mentioned Hodel, I just want to get this one thought. I really believe he was brokering Nazi art in Los Angeles and mopping up all the money from these Hollywood starlets and so forth. And what happens when that happens? You get an instant credibility, you're bona fides, nobody does your background checking, and you're over there with Jack Parsons working on the next V3 or V4, lickety split. And so I really believe that the backbone of this whole story, I like your collegiate Gothic, and I do think there's the paperclip compromise operation is Hodel, and along with Robert Mayhew. And yeah, we'll keep working on our respective, lines of inquiry, and it's fun. It's fun to watch. It's fun to do. This is great research.
Absolutely. George, how's that documentary coming along?
Well,
Is that going to be a documentary? Because that's going to really spread the message.
well, I thought it was going to be made for $50, and then it went to 10,000, and then it went up from there. So I look at it in terms of trade-offs and say, well, if I wrote a book, and I can do that in 48 hours, is that a better use of my time than the documentary? I don't know, but they're working on it hard, and they're getting investors and so forth. The gals out in California with Michael, and I wish them the best. And I just don't know where to come down on, what's the best way forward. I think the books are fast, they're quick. You get immediate feedback on whether you did something good or not. Where the movie is kind of a space shot, and you don't know until you hit the button, a year later, after all the money's been put in, if it's going to fly or not. And I don't know. I know there's people out there that do that all the time, and they say, "What are you afraid of?" But for me, I like the groundedness of the paper and the books, and so we'll see. I don't know yet. It's new territory for me, and we'll see.
What do you say, John?
I say thanks for being with us tonight here on McDuff Lives, and we will see you guys back again next week at the same time, 8 o'clock Eastern. And George Webb, Professor Hamamoto, I can't thank you enough for your support as I've worked my way through writing this book about my dad. We have a ebook on the way, and as soon as we possibly can, we'll be publishing some hard copies. So hang in there, guys, and thanks for your interest. Thank you again, everyone, and thank you, Andy DeBala, for production tonight once again. Thanks for being in the chat, and thanks to our moderators. Everybody, have a good evening.